So next up, we have John Morse. He's his widely acclaimed first novel, Half Staff 2018, introduced his protagonist Dan Steele. His second novel, Chokepoint, which continues the Dan Steele saga, was released in November 2019. So he is well versed for our next presentation on anatomy of a thriller. So take it away, Mr. John Morse.
Good afternoon, everybody. Uh, really happy that everybody could join us this afternoon. A quick word about myself. I'm a former naval officer, and then I was a defense contractor for several years. I found that when I was starting writing in the Navy, and as a contractor, my words were somewhat constrained. They told you how to use pre-messaged or pre-formatted messages. They told you what font to use, what pictures, and so forth. So it was kind of constrained. I did take a creative writing course at Dartmouth. I always really wanted to write, and so far I've written 2 thrillers, Half Staff 2018 and Choke Point. I wouldn't call myself a subject matter expert in thrillers, but today I'd like to just share some observations, some things I've learned along the way. And my view is if you can take a nugget or two out of this 30-minute investment, I'll be very, very happy. So let's get started. Okay, as far as an introduction, the genre can be approached in any number of ways. I am giving you a starting point today. I think all thrillers share some foundation stones, and you'll see these as you read them. The inciting incident. James talked about that earlier. Very, very important. You got to start with action. We'll go over plotting strategies, setting and raising the stakes, making sure that there's something here of value that is worth the protagonist's life and maybe the lives of some others. Suspense, it's got to be there. It's got to be dialed up as the story goes on. And if you're sitting on the edge of your seat while you're reading a thriller, then the author has achieved pretty much his goal. The characters, they carry the story through with action, with dialogue, and relationships, which may change many, many times over the course of the book. I've got some representative archetypes here. There are many authors, many subgenres of the thriller. My favorite, there he is, an American assassin. Sadly, Vince Flynn died in 2013. His series is being carried on by Kyle Mills, I guess, as part of the agreement with his legacy and his foundation. Psychological, Paula Hawkins is terrific. Number 3, action and adventure, Lee Child. If you've ever read Jack Reacher, you know Lee Child. He is a terrific protagonist and just a great read. Military, Tom Clancy. That's another one of my interests as a former military guy. And Tom Clancy wrote, among other things, The Hunt for Red October, which, if you've read it and don't remember it, I'd be surprised. It's an absolute great military thriller. Ruth Ware, The Girl in Cabin 10. It's a terrific book about a woman on a cruise ship, and as she describes the shadow, the footprints being cast under the cabin door. If that doesn't get you kind of excited and looking around the room to see if somebody else is there, I'm not sure what would. As far as spy, Daniel Silva is a great architect of that subgenre. His protagonist is Gabriel Ilan, who is a fine arts restorer when he's not out chasing the bad guys. And I'm sure all of you remember or done a lot of reading in terms of James Bond. He was kind of the first, Ian Fleming's James Bond was kind of the first guy on the scene with a real thriller. And John Grisham. John Grisham, I remember very well reading his first blockbuster, The Firm, and that certainly got people excited, and you certainly learned how to deal with fear and suspense in that book. So I could have put 10 or 15 authors out to the side of the ones that I have listed. I know you have your favorites, but it's just a big genre. It's a big tent, and there's lots of possibilities. I don't think anybody feels particularly crowded out in the genre. So the inciting incident, and one way to think of the inciting incident is think ripped from the headlines. Let me give a couple examples. We just had the Putin problem. This guy Navalny, who has been protesting, has tried to get center stage, and Putin didn't like it. The guy's in jail now for 2 years. But some of the special operatives in the Kremlin sprinkled Navalny's underwear with some neurotoxin, almost caused him to lose his life. He recovered in Germany. And by the way, I'm not sure whether he wears boxers or briefs, but there's something ripped right out of the headlines that is a great inciting incident for a novel. Recently, there was a news article about the fact that some divers who were clearing some nets up in the Baltic Sea found a World War II Enigma machine. The Enigma machine, as you may recall, is the coding machine which the Nazi powers used. And we had a great breakthrough in Britain with someone who cracked that code and was able to read these dispatches, which really helped hasten the Allies' actions against the Axis. Storming the Capitol earlier this month early last month is a classic ripped from the headlines article, and it's a good example of an inciting incident. Tiger Woods this week, there's another one just right a couple days ago. Greatest golfer who ever played, and he rolled his SUV off the highway and got some pretty serious injuries. Anyway, define the time frame. As Katie told you, you really need to spend some time defining the time, whether it's current or future, and describe the playing field. Is it domestic? Is it international? Or as Katie told you, is it a story world you invent? Thrillers are action-oriented. One of my favorite things is lighting the fuse, whether it's an inciting incident or whether somebody's getting killed. Introducing the protagonist is a big deal. That needs to be done early on, or you'll get the reader confused about, well, who's the hero of the book? Introduce the bad guy or guys, and perhaps the organization, like in the James Bond series. SMERSH was an organization that always caused them problems. Use a prompt to hook the reader, make them turn the page to chapter 2. You want to prompt the reader to say, I need to read more. They've got to go to chapter 2 or you've lost them. All these things have to really occur in the first 10 pages. This is kind of why agents ask you for the first 10 pages. If you don't have them hooked, if you don't have the agent looking for chapter 2, then you don't have a saleable thriller. I'll give an example of this. If I asked you to tell me about the Battle of Concord, some historians would start in England in the 1600s and move through the landing at Plymouth, and then they'd finally get to Concord. A thriller writer has to write about the shot heard around the world in the first 10 pages. The readers of thrillers aren't interested in learning how to build the watch. They want to know what time it is. So you've heard this term before, pantser plotter. The pantser starts the trip without a GPS. He has no destination in mind. The plotter, on the other hand, has GPS, a 60-page blueprint. He knows where he's going and has a AAA guide by his side. I wrote my first book, Half Staff, as a pantser, and I wrote Chokepoint with a 3-page outline. I found that I painted myself in the corners frequently and would have to take long walks to figure out how I was going to get out of the corner. Hook, intensity, and prop, which I kind of mentioned. Hook is pulling the reader into the narrative. I can tell you, one of my good friends read my first book, and I said, well, how did you like it? He said, well, why didn't you start the book on page 49? I had too much of a buildup and too much backstory, and he's a very, very widely published author. Intensity, that's how you build into the scene. You increase the danger, increase the stakes. And prompt is the little crumbs you leave at the end of a chapter that make the reader want to go to the next page. Obstacles, complications, struggle, and then repeat. As I say, you want to make your protagonist crawl through barbed wire to get to his goal. You've really got to treat him badly, and he's really got to struggle getting there. If you don't do that, then it's a ho-hum story. Branches and sequels, where could it go? I read a thriller recently by Mark Greaney where the hero is being chased by 20 guys with automatic weapons. He's not armed. He's in the rainforest. He jumps up on a tree and grabs a stout vine and swings on the vine across a gang of about a dozen huge alligators who are sunning themselves. And he says, man, this is great. I'm home free. Unfortunately, he didn't know about the termites that had been chewing at the bottom of that branch. And when he's halfway over the alligators, the branch breaks and the story goes sideways from there. That's kind of where it could go. Just more. These are techniques, distractions, box canyons, red herrings, broken confidences. You know, a red herring that I left in Half Staff was some Arabic writing and some metal pieces that had Arabic numerals on them. But the attack that was underway did not come from the Middle East. Distractions, Dan Steele, my protagonist, goes after a bomb maker in Syria and finds out when he's on the way back to home base that he picked up a woman. She does turn out to be the bomb maker, by the way. Characters out of character. I think the best representative of this is Jack Ryan. Jack Ryan went from a mild-mannered desk jockey to a very, very capable agent. if you've ever watched that series. Setting the stakes. There's a lot to setting the stakes. How much are you willing to risk for a kitten's life or 10,000 lives or 100,000 lives? How much does your organization care about something? If Powerball is at 30 million, you might say, I'm not even going to buy a ticket. It's not worth it. If it's at 900 million, you might think differently about that. Those are some of the things that are at stake in a thriller. They cause different levels of stress, tension, and suspense. Some people are fighting for democracy, for security, and for our American way. Those are kind of big goals and big objectives, but some thriller writers use those very effectively. How to raise the stakes, an unexpected incident. Or maybe you get mugged in Washington. Expert predictions. What are the effects of an unintended nuclear detonation in Yemen? Impossible odds. Who's making the call? Is it from the protagonist's point of view, or is it somebody else's view? And then you've got the local, regional, worldwide. I think all of us have lived with COVID-19 enough to get the difference between those. You know, it started off as a local thing. It was a West Coast thing. Then it turned out with hot spots in New York, Connecticut, New Jersey. And now we're dealing with the South African variant, the UK variant. It is worldwide. So Alfred Hitchcock is really a terrific writer of mystery and suspense, as you all know. Alfred Hitchcock famously said, a good story is life with all the dull parts taken out. Now, if you can use that in writing your thriller, that's just terrific. Racing against the clock. You've all seen the movies where people are going to the next telephone booth to get the call from the captors or from the bad guys. The countdown timer already started. Which wire do we cut? The green one or the black one? You know, you can use things like light versus dark. Well, if you're looking in your cupboard with a flashlight, that's not too suspenseful. If you're at 150 feet underwater and your flashlight goes out, that kind of raises things immediately and builds suspense. You know, at some point, the stage has to be cleared. You have to realize that through all your senses, you're going into an area of great danger. I like to use all the senses when I can, and you're going into an area of pedal to the metal, no holds barred. You're going to clear the stage of all the extras, and it's going to be your guy against the bad guy, one-on-one. I like to think of this as similar to the 1812 Overture. You may remember that song. It's played on the 4th of July every year up in the Boston area by the Boston Pops. The Russian peasants are rising up against the retreating Grand Armée of Napoleon. It reaches a fevered pitch with timpani, with bells, and with cannon. It's a fantastic musical track, if you will, that if you write your storyboard and it looks like the 1812 Overture, you've probably done a pretty good job. One thing I would caution people about is beware of the Deus Ex Machina. That's where they used to have a man-powered crane come in and drop a character into a scene or remove a character. It's a clumsy out of the blue rescue. And I had a reviewer of Choke Point, my second thriller, point out that I had the bad guy leave in a Chinese rocket. And he said, your book just ran off the rails. He gave me 2 stars, and the rest is history. But beware of the of imposing something that's mechanical and doesn't flow with the story at the end, or to save the hero. People don't want that. They want to hear something that's believable, something that you could imagine without a lot of work. So that's a note de bene. Okay. Your characters. Who doesn't like James Bond, Jack Reacher, Scott Horvath, James Recchi, John Corey, Gabriel Allon, Dirk Pitt, or Travis McGee? So what's your protagonist going to be? Perfect 10, a flawed hero? Many times the hero is somebody who is not a guy riding on the white horse right away, but he's just barely able to reach the stirrups. In a like manner, the bad guy, you want to have him with some redeeming qualities. Killer with a Robin Hood heart. You want to blur the distinction between good and bad. And who is the reader rooting for? I had a guy come up to me last week after reading Choke Point. He said, I really like the bad guy. It moved the story along. The motives, are they going to be confused, secret, diabolical? Will they change over the course of the book? Innocent people die. That's collateral damage. And innocent people generally do die in a thriller. You want to save some people for a sequel. In my the villains from my first book and my second both lived. Well, they're coming back. They're teaming up against my hero, Dan Steele, in the book I'm writing now. So, you got to make all these characters count and use them as foils against each other and against the plot. I'd say that fiction is everyone's genre. It's a naturally very large sandbox. It gives you a lot of room to write, and it gives you a lot of freedom to pretty much do whatever you want as long as you're able to hold the reader's attention. I don't think that fiction is as formulaic as some of the other writing. It's kind of a wide open space, and I would recommend using all of it. Edge of the seat. I read a recent book, and I was on the edge of my seat for 200 pages. I mean, it was so intense that I really wanted a break. I think you need to use a little bit of balance as you write. You don't want to have the reader stressed out as he's reading your book. You want to have his attention. You want to make him turn to the next page. But wow, that book for 200 pages was wild. But you do want your reader to page turn with a vengeance. This is what you'd like to have people say if your objective is getting readers to page turn with a vengeance, not put it down. Never felt so good losing so much sleep. And it's kind of like a roller coaster that just goes on for forever. I'd say that every great novel has some thriller in it, and if you can get those elements and put them together with some believable characters in a believable setting, and keep the the string taut as you're writing, then you'll be a very successful thriller writer. I think it's a great catharsis writing these books, and it's even better when other people have that same emotional reaction to your writing. There's my secret word, spalted. For those of you who don't know, spalding is something that takes place in wood when it's exposed to usually water or moisture. And so you'll get a piece of wood that started perfectly white and like a maple, and it gradually gets spalding, or places where rot takes over, and it creates these beautiful black lines through the wood. So that's the secret word. And that's all I've got. I'd be happy to answer any questions if we have time.
Excellent, sir. We do have a few questions. First up, John, did you create Dan Steele completely from your imagination, or perhaps a composite, or based on someone you may have served with?
Dan Steele is my fictional hero. He was really created from scratch. But I have some pictures of some famous people who are really my archetype for Dan Steele. He doesn't he includes a lot of different people, but I have an idea of what he looks like, and though I haven't shown anybody that, he embodies a lot of characteristics of a lot of different people.
One more question. John, what strategies can an author who has not been in the military or had any death-defying, adrenaline-filled experiences use to write a thriller to make it more believable?
Well, I think anybody can write a thriller, and thrillers don't have to necessarily be about the military. They share a lot of things in common, but there are a lot of thrillers which have nothing to do with the military. You know, I mean, if you look at the thriller genre, it's huge, and people are writing about all sorts of things all the time, about relationships that go south, about people who are bad actors and do things to other people which aren't particularly good. Somebody's an investigator. You know, there are all sorts of things out there that are going to intrigue people and get them to like what they read. So I would say that everybody, that's the reason I showed that page previously. Everybody has a thriller inside of me. You look at that list of authors, it really has a pretty broad-based appeal to people. And if you like that kind of thing, if you like getting your adrenaline pumped up a little bit, if you like to be a little bit nervous, if you're afraid of what's beyond the next bend in the road, then you can write about that. So it was natural for me because I was first a military guy and then a defense contractor. I had a lot of good experiences to share, but I think this is the wide open genre. And if you look at the artists, the authors that I listed on the previous page, they run the gamut from military thrillers to psychological thrillers, and you know, that's a good place if you want to read some interesting stories. Any of those authors have a lot to read. Over.
Oh, all right. Thank you so much. If anyone else has any questions, we have a minute. So I'm going to take this time to remind you that we do have the raffle link in the chat. If you will scroll up, and his raffle word was spalted SPALT as in Tom, ED as in Dan, Steel. All right. So no other questions yet. So I think we are going to move on to the next presentation. Except that I could ask the question myself. Which book did you have an easier time writing? The first one or the second one? Am I muted? No. Oh, John?
Yes.
Just a question. Which book did you have an easier time writing? The first one or the second one?
Actually, that's a great question. I had an easier time writing the first one because it was a clear pantser type book. The second one, I had a little bit more difficulty because it was an international book. And I didn't go, I had been to the places, but I didn't visit them again. So does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does, sir. Thank you very much. All right. Thanks again to John Morse